The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Let's start with a small fact. You're going to die. Sorry if that's too much to start with, but I believe in getting straight to the point. Now, before you click away or drop this book on the floor, let me tell you why I've picked up the story of a small girl in Nazi Germany. A girl who stole books. A girl who kissed words on paper and tucked them under her pillow like they were treasures. Because they were. Her name is Liesel Meminger. This isn't a fairy tale. It's not sweet. It's sharp, like the edge of a page. And I should know. I've seen the color of every soul I've taken. Reds, blacks, grays. I saw Liesel's life unfold in a blur of snow and smoke, of laughter and bombs. And when I tell you her story, I ask only one thing. Trust me. I'm not cruel. I'm simply efficient. The story begins on a train, with Liesel holding her little brother's hand as he dies. It begins with loss. But don't worry, it's not all death. There is also a man who plays the accordion like it's the sound of safety. A woman who swears like a soldier but hides love under her apron. A boy with lemon-colored hair who paints his face with mud to be Jesse Owens. And words. So many words. You see, Liesel learns to read from her foster father in the basement. Late at night, candlelight flickering, she learns that words can be beautiful and dangerous, that they can heal and they can hurt, that Hitler used them to build an empire of hatred. And Liesel? She begins to use them to build something else entirely. She steals books, from Nazi burnings, from the mayor's library, from the snow. She writes her own stories, while the world outside her door falls apart. And I watched her. Through all of it, I know what you're thinking. Why this story? Why this girl? Because sometimes, even I need reminding that humans, in all their ugliness and all their beauty, are worth watching. Because even when the bombs fall and the world turns gray, a single stolen word can light up the dark. So sit back, open your ears, let the pages speak. This is the story of the Book Thief. And it begins with me. Part 1, The Gravedigger's Handbook. It begins with snow, a white field, a train moving like a slow breath across the German countryside, and a little girl staring out the window with eyes too large for her face, as if the world was already trying to push its way inside her. Her name is Liesel Meminger. She is 9 years old, and the first time I saw her was when her brother died. His name was Werner. He coughed for most of the journey, a small, rattling sound that tried to hold on. But by the time the train stopped, the sound had left him, and only silence remained. They buried him in the snow beside the tracks. 2 men dug a shallow grave. The girl watched. Her mother wept, soft and broken, like paper tearing in the wind. And the gravediggers, young, impatient, cold, they made jokes to keep their fingers moving. One of them dropped a book, a small black thing, forgotten, frozen slightly at the corners. The Gravedigger's Handbook. Liesel picked it up, her first stolen book, though at the time, she didn't yet know how to read. But let's be clear. It wasn't the theft that mattered. It was the timing. That book would become the seed of something far larger, a quiet rebellion, a love for language, and the only way Liesel would learn to survive what was coming. You see, she was on her way to Himmel Street. When Liesel arrived in Malching, her mother was already gone. Political reasons, most likely. There were rumors of communists. The air was thick with suspicion in 1939. You didn't ask questions. You just said goodbye. Hans and Rosa Huberman were waiting, her new foster parents. Hans was a painter when there was work. He also played the accordion, an instrument that sounded like breathing when he held it. He smelled of cigarettes and clean wood shavings. He spoke gently, like every word needed permission to be said. Rosa, on the other hand, was a storm. She cursed like it was punctuation, called Liesel a Sawmensch, with such regularity it almost became a term of endearment. Her love was sharp-edged, hidden under insults and laundry soap. She washed clothes for the wealthy and complained about it daily. But don't let the shouting fool you. There was love in that house, strange, uncomfortable, but real. At night, Liesel dreamed of her brother, of train tracks and snow, of eyes that didn't blink anymore. She would wake up screaming, kicking the sheets into knots. Hans would come in, quietly, no scolding, just presence. And when she finally calmed, he would sit with her, bring out a book, the one she had stolen, The Gravedigger's Handbook. They began slowly, one letter at a time. A is for apple, B is for Baum. Hans was patient. He painted the alphabet on the wall of the basement with a piece of chalk. And in that cold, damp space, words began to take shape. This was where Liesel truly began to steal, not books, not yet, but language. Word by word, syllable by syllable. It became her secret power. It was also how she learned to love her papa. And then came Rudy Steiner, the boy next door with hair the color of lemons and a heart too big for his chest. Rudy, who idolized Jesse Owens and once painted himself black and ran through the streets, shouting into the wind, unaware, or maybe uncaring, of how dangerous that was in 1939 Germany. He asked Liesel for a kiss on the first day they met. She refused. But don't worry, you'll hear about that kiss again later. Rudy became her partner in crime, in stealing, in running, in surviving. Together, they navigated childhood in a place where childhood had no business surviving. Germany was changing. The swastika was on every building. Books were being burned in the town square. Neighbors disappeared overnight. And Liesel, the girl who stole her first book at a graveside, watched and learned. She learned that words could burn, that Hitler had used them to light an entire country on fire. She learned that reading wasn't just a way to escape, it was a way to resist. And yet, amid it all, she also learned how to laugh. Because that's the strange thing about humans. You make jokes even as the bombs fall. You sing songs on your way to the shelter. You kiss your children good night when you're not sure if morning will come. I saw it all. I watched Liesel grow into herself, through letters and lullabies, through fists and fire. And let me tell you this. Even death has a soft spot for stories. The ones that begin in snow. The ones that taste of bread and ink. The ones where a girl learns that stealing can be an act of love. This was only the beginning. Part 2, The Shoulder Shrug. It was on Hitler's birthday that Liesel stole her second book. She didn't mean to, not at first. She didn't wake up that morning thinking, today is a good day for theft. She woke up like everyone else in Malching, tight in the chest, dreading the town square where the speeches would echo and the flames would rise. They were celebrating the Führer, of course. April 20th. A grand occasion in 1940s Germany. Flags unfurled like blood across windows. Brass bands puffed and marched. People clapped because they were told to, not because they felt like clapping. It was easier that way. Safer. The book burning was scheduled for that evening. In the middle of the square, a pile of books stood like a funeral pyre. Pages curled at the edges even before the fire began. The crowd gathered. Uniforms gleamed. Children waved flags. And from somewhere behind the smiling faces, fear crouched, hidden but very much alive. The mayor's wife stood near the front. Her face was pale, drawn, distant. Her eyes never quite on the fire. Liesel was there with the Hitler Youth Group, standing in a neat row. Rosa had scrubbed her face that morning and told her, behave. Say nothing stupid. Hans had said nothing at all. He had simply looked at her with that soft, tired expression, the one that always made her chest hurt a little. The speeches began. A man with a red face shouted until spittle flew from his mouth. He spoke of cleansing, of purity, of German greatness. The crowd nodded. Some even cheered. Liesel kept her eyes down, focused on the hem of the girl's dress in front of her. Then came the fire. The books were thrown in with ceremony. Pages hissed, curled, vanished. Liesel watched the flames lick the words away, and something twisted inside her. She had learned to love words, to see their weight and wonder. Watching them burn felt like watching someone drown a song. After the fire died, people began to drift away. The crowd loosened. The band stopped. Liesel lingered. Smoke hung low over the ash pile. The heat had gone, but the scent of scorched paper stayed behind, clinging to everything. She saw it then. A book. Half-burned but alive. Its spine was charred. Its title barely readable. The Shoulder Shrug. A book about a Jewish man. A story that had slipped through the flames. Liesel looked around. No one was watching. She moved quickly, casually. Bent down like she was tying her shoe. Her fingers closed around the book, hot and flaking. She tucked it into her coat. That night, she would smell like smoke for hours. What she didn't know was that someone had seen her. Ilse Hermann, the mayor's wife. She watched from a high window, silent behind glass. She saw the girl reach into the ashes. Saw her cradle the burnt story like it was something sacred. She said nothing. But a seed was planted that day, one that would grow. Back home, Rosa grumbled about the mess the crowd had left behind. She didn't notice the book hidden under Liesel's mattress. Hans, however, noticed the change in her. The way she stared at the walls as if words were written there. The way she held her coat close, like it carried more than warmth. When he found the book later, he didn't scold her. He smiled. "You found another one," he said. Liesel nodded. She didn't have to explain. He knew. She had stolen it from a fire. She had stolen it from Hitler himself. And somehow that made it feel right. That night, they read by candlelight again. The words were broken in places, scorched at the edges, but still alive. Liesel read slowly, tracing each word with care. The book told the story of a boy who refused to hate, who shrugged his shoulders at the fear and anger around him, and chose something else. It was a quiet story but powerful. It was everything the flames had tried to destroy. At school, Liesel kept her head down. She wasn't the fastest learner. She still struggled to read out loud. But Rudy sat beside her, grinning whenever she stumbled. He called her book thief, now like it was her name. She didn't mind. One day, he asked again for a kiss. She punched him in the arm. They raced down Himmel Street, laughing. Feet thudding on cold pavement. Hearts light for once. But underneath the laughter, Liesel knew things were changing. There were more uniforms in Malching. More whispered conversations behind closed doors. The sky seemed lower. The air thicker. Still in the basement, the words waited. Hans painted over the alphabet when it faded. He brought home scraps of paper, pencils. He encouraged her. "You're getting better," he said. Liesel smiled. She didn't say it, but she felt it. She was. And with every word she read, with every story she held on to, she felt less like a girl who had lost everything and more like someone who could one day give something back. Even if it was just a story. Even if it was stolen. Part 3, Mein Kampf. Max Vandenberg came with a book. It was not his, and it was not honest. It was Mein Kampf, stamped with the swastika, black and red and angry. But he carried it like it was sacred, like it was his last ticket into the heart of Germany. Because in a way it was. He was starving, thin as paper, eyes like cracked glass. When he arrived on Himmel Street, he knocked 3 times on the Huberman's door, just as instructed. Each knock sounded like it might shatter him. Hans opened the door. The two men looked at each other for a long time. And without a word, Hans nodded and stepped aside. That was how Max Vandenberg entered the Huberman household. With silence, with shaking hands, with a book full of hate that he would soon turn into something beautiful. He stayed in the basement. It was cold and damp and dark, but it was safer than the streets. Rosa brought him food. Liesel brought him pages. Hans brought him quiet companionship. They gave him their silence, and it saved him. Liesel was curious. She asked questions. At first, Max barely spoke. His words had dried up in the journey from Stuttgart. But slowly they began to return. He told her about his mother. About his father, who died in the Great War. About the friend who brought him false papers. About running. About hiding. About fear so thick it felt like drowning. And in return, Liesel shared her words. She read to him. She told him about the book she stole from the fire. About the mayor's wife and her vast, silent library. About her brother. About her nightmares. They shared their sleeplessness. 2 souls awake in a world that wanted them silent. It was Max who gave Liesel a gift like no other. He painted over the pages of Mein Kampf and wrote his own story on top. A book called The Standover Man. It was a story about fear, friendship, and standing over the things that try to crush you. He drew pictures with thick black lines. He called Liesel the best standover man he'd ever known. And when she read it, she cried. Because it was true. Because it was beautiful. In that basement, they built something stronger than walls. A friendship. A resistance. A place where words didn't burn, but bloomed. And above them, the world darkened. The war crept closer. But still they read. Part 4, The Standover Man. In the dead of winter, Max fell ill. His body gave in to the hunger, the damp, the fear. He collapsed like paper folding. Rosa moved him to Liesel's room, hidden beneath the blankets. For days, he didn't move. He barely breathed. Liesel refused to leave his side. She brought him little things. A warm rag. Bits of food. Her words. She sat by the bed and read aloud from the books she had stolen and borrowed. She brought him the weather report, describing the sky in great detail, even when it was just gray. She told him about Rudy and the schools and the marching and the bombs that hadn't come yet but would. And each day, she left a gift at his bedside. A ribbon, a feather, a stone, a button, a pine cone. Tiny things she found on the street. Little pieces of the world, to remind him it was still there. This became her daily routine. Read, talk, leave a gift, and hope he would wake. The silence of that time settled over Himmel Street like snow. Even Rosa softened. She cursed less. Her hands moved slower, gentler. And when Liesel cried, she held her. Hans watched too from the doorway, smoked his cigarettes down to the filter. Every night, Death passed over that house and looked in. Not yet, I would whisper. Then one morning, Max opened his eyes, and he smiled. Part 5, The Whistler. Liesel continued to visit the mayor's house. She didn't knock. She just slipped into the library where the books waited. Ilse Hermann never stopped her. She simply left the window open. It was a silent permission, a quiet invitation, a gift without words. One day, Liesel found a book called The Whistler. She tucked it into her coat and ran. She shared it with Max, with Rudy, with herself. She read it again and again. The story of a man who whistles as he walks toward his own end. A man who chooses calm over fear. The book became part of her. But then Rosa lost the mayor's laundry account. Times grew tighter. Food thinner. Tempers shorter. Liesel snapped. She shouted at Ilse. Called her weak. A coward. A woman who had everything and gave nothing. Ilse didn't yell back. She only nodded. Then closed the door. Liesel walked away angry. But deep down, she felt the weight of it. That night, she returned home and told Max the truth. I hurt someone today, she said. Max nodded. Then go write about it, he said. And so she did. She wrote her first words. And the bombs had not yet fallen, but something in Liesel's world had begun to change. The power of words, the fragility of people, the importance of kindness, and always the silence that follows every story, waiting for the next page to turn. Part 6, The Dream Carrier. Words were becoming Liesel's salvation. And Max's too. In the basement, in the dead air that smelled of damp cement and ink, the two of them created a world stitched together by syllables and scraps. Liesel carried her books like offerings, and read aloud as if casting spells. She found a new one at the mayor's house, The Dream Carrier. A story of a child who delivers people's dreams. It was both sad and full of light. Liesel chose it because Max was still sick. She hoped the story would reach him, even through fever and silence. She hoped dreams would carry him back to life. She read to him each day, even when his eyes were closed. She made the words soft, then strong, depending on the chapter. Rosa would listen too, standing with her arms crossed, pretending not to cry. Outside, the war marched on. The sirens screamed more often now. Himmel Street was drilled on where to run when the bombs came. The Fiedler's basement was deeper, safer, so that became the neighborhood's shelter. And when the alerts rang, everyone gathered, wrinkled hands, trembling shoulders, children holding on to stuffed animals. One night during a raid, Liesel forgot her fear. She forgot the shaking walls and how the air tasted like metal. Instead, she stood and began to read The Dream Carrier aloud. Her voice floated through the basement like smoke. 1 page. 2. 3. And then the silence fell, not of fear but of listening. That night, a basement became a library. And fear bowed its head. Later, Rosa told her, "You're just like your papa." Because words, when spoken with love, were stronger than sirens. Part 7. The Complete Duden Dictionary and Thesaurus. Ilse Hermann had not forgotten Liesel's shouting, nor had she locked the window. One afternoon, a gift appeared on the mayor's library window ledge, wrapped in brown paper. Liesel opened it at home, hands trembling. It was the Complete Duden Dictionary and Thesaurus. A book of words. Every word. Definitions. Synonyms. The building blocks of all stories. Inside, a note for the girl who stole books and who returned them to life. Liesel was stunned. This wasn't just a book. It was a map, a toolbox, a garden. She devoured it, carried it under her arm like armor. And Max noticed. He watched her grow bolder, more certain. Each word she learned was a seed she would later plant in her own pages. But then came the march. One morning, a group of Jews was paraded through Malching, gaunt, broken, shuffling down the road toward Dachau. They were barely human, more shadows than people. Liesel watched, frozen. So did Rudy. And Hans. He saw one man stumble, saw the whip rise, and before he could stop himself, he stepped forward and offered bread. The silence that followed was sharp. The man accepted it. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Then the soldier whipped him. And then he whipped Hans. The whip didn't stop. Not after one lash. Not after two. Hans fell to the ground. And Liesel screamed. The soldiers moved on. The crowd disappeared. Hans sat on the curb, bleeding and broken. Later, he whispered to Liesel, "I've made a mistake." Because helping a Jew in public meant attention. Danger. The knock on the door. The whisper of boots. And so Max had to leave. He packed his things in silence. Took nothing but the standover man. And he hugged Liesel. She begged him not to go. But he walked away into the night. Part 8, The Word Shaker. Winter returned. And with it, the ache of Max's absence. Liesel could feel the empty space where he used to be. In the basement, in her thoughts, in her heart. Then one day, another gift arrived in the mail. No return address. Just a small, hand-bound book. The Word Shaker. It was from Max. He had written it for her before he left. A story. A parable. It told of a girl who stood in a forest of words, grown from the seeds of truth. A girl who climbed the tallest tree, even as the world tried to chop it down. She shouted her words from the highest branch. And the forest listened. Liesel read it again and again. She read it to Hans. To Rosa. To herself. Because Max believed in her. He believed in words. He believed in resistance that didn't come from fists, but from pages. And Liesel began to write more. She filled notebooks. She watched the skies. She walked among the silence. Rudy kissed her cheek once. Just once. And then laughed it off. But they both felt something in that brief contact, something they didn't yet have words for. Because this story was not just about bombs and Jews and Germans and fear. It was about what you hold on to when the world is trying to take everything away. Liesel held on to words. And through them, she held on to hope. Even as the darkness crept closer. Even as death's shadow grew longer across the sky. Part 9, The Last Human Stranger. The war was closing in now, like a noose tightening around Himmel Street. Everyone felt it, in the way the air seemed heavier, in the way even children's laughter felt quieter. The bombs came more often, and the sirens screamed with increasing urgency. Liesel kept reading. She read to the people huddled in basements. To Frau Holt-Sapfel, who finally came asking, not for food, not for favors, but for stories. Liesel brought the Whistler and read to her on cold afternoons. Word by word, page by page, Frau Holt-Sapfel's grief softened, just enough to listen. Max was gone. Hans was gone too, sent to fight. After giving bread to the Jew, the Nazis sent him to the front. His accordion stayed behind, silent and waiting. Rosa hugged it sometimes, clutching it like it might still be warm. And Liesel, she wrote. Her words poured into the pages of a book she called The Book Thief. She wrote in the basement, on the floor, surrounded by paint cans and quiet. She wrote of the boy with hair the color of lemons, of the man who played the accordion like breathing, of the girl who discovered the power of words. She wrote because writing was surviving. And then Max returned. It was during another march of Jews through Malching. Liesel saw him among them, dusty, emaciated, eyes dull from the road. She ran to him, screaming his name. She clung to him. The soldiers tore her away and beat her. But in that moment, they saw each other. Really saw each other. It was brief, brutal, beautiful, and it reminded her why she wrote. Part 10, The Book Thief. The bombs came without sirens. One morning, the sky just broke. It happened while Liesel was in the basement, editing her book. The Book Thief. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. And when she came up, Himmel Street was gone. Hans was gone. Rosa was gone. Rudy was gone. His lips were blue. His eyes closed. Liesel kissed him then, at last, the kiss she had always meant to give him. She screamed for him. For all of them. But no one answered. Death came, as he always does. But he took something different with him that day. He took a story. Because after the wreckage, as the workers combed through rubble, they found a girl. Alive, covered in ash, holding a book. The book thief. She had written her life into its pages. And Death, curious as ever, picked it up and read it. He carried it with him long after the war ended, because it reminded him that humans can be ugly, destructive, cruel, but also so impossibly beautiful. Epilogue: The Handover Man. Years later, Liesl lived in Sydney. She grew old. She had a family, a quiet life, but the words never left her. They had been carved into her bones. When death came for her, gently, he handed her the book. The book thief. Do you understand it? She asked. Yes, he said, but I'm still haunted by humans. And there it ended. Liesl miming her story. Max's story. Hans and Rosa and Rudy. A story of grief, but also of gifts. Of bombs, but also of books. Of the worst and best of us. This has been the story of the book thief. A story narrated by death, but truly deeply about life. About words. And what they can do. Markus Zusak gave us more than a novel. He gave us a reminder that words are both weapons and healers. That even in the darkest times, stories can light the way. That a girl with a book can be braver than any soldier. May you carry this story with you. Not just the sorrow, but the beauty, the laughter, the colors, the way words can save a life, even when all else is lost. Thank you for listening.